When I started a new world, I wanted a new architectural style. Having just barely passed Spanish, I decided to go with the clay houses of Mexico, and being in the middle of a riverbed highway, clay was plentiful. At first, when the rivers ran dry, I went over to the swampland. While hard to get a foothold in transport, I soon found myself drowning in clay again. Once that was used up, I found it nearly impossible to get clay beyond a sluggish pace, for the remaining deposits sat at the bottom of the sea and were impossible to find in the dark, meaning that by the time I had found something, I had to go up for air. Digging under the clay proved difficult as I constantly had to reconfigure my tiny mines as the water poured in. So I figured I would go brewing and get some potions going. So I go to the nether and get blaze rods, and once I got my brewery set up, I look up recipes. First I looked up how to make a potion of water breathing, and all I needed was a pufferfish, and so I fished for a minute. Once that was caught, I tossed the pufferfish in my chest, and I moved on to night vision. And I quickly found that night vision requires a golden carrot. Simple enough, I have plenty of gold, and while I hadn't found any carrots, I was sure they weren't that hard to find. First idea was a zombie farm. Easy, simple zombie farm. Give me a carrot, iron, and food for my dogs. I actually had a spawner close to my base, so I went about setting it up, only to dig down and find that it was above a ravine. So now instead of digging out the chute that the zombies fall down, I had to build one up, all the while getting shot at by skeletons and attacked by creepers. It was a terrible slog, but eventually I got it up and running. I'd go AFK and do my chores and wait for the profits of my venture to roll in. I came back an hour later and was happy to see that the zombies were spawning and falling perfectly. I go down to check my stash, only to find it full of rotten flesh. This weirds me out, and so I do some searching, only to find that zombies only drop cool stuff when you fight them. As much as that sucked, I didn't think much of it and simply blocked up the water and made myself a little hole to attack the zombies from, only to find out that baby zombies spawn as well as the big boys, and so I ended up losing a lot of my dogs defending myself from the mobs. After recalibration, I was able to farm peacefully for another half hour, only to once again be baffled by a lack of carrots. I search online again and find out that the zombies no longer spawn carrots. So, I do the only logical next thing. I blow up the spawner I had spent so much time getting operational and then made a memorial to my dogs. But my next step to getting the potion was simple. I would expand my river highways until I was connected to every ocean and then simply explore till I found a village. This village would either have carrots that I could farm or barter until a carrot could be offered. A foolproof plan. After digging the canals, I set off, only to find my world very barren. Seas never ended. Mountain ranges had so little food I was forced to return early, and where I did find villages, they had long since been destroyed by mobs. Until I found an igloo. Now, for those unaware, igloos are pretty useless. They have a bed and a redstone torch in them. That is, until you check below the carpet. There you find a trapdoor. Going through the door, you reach a laboratory. Along with the brewing stand, there are 2 encapsulated villagers, 1 zombified. This mostly exists to teach the players how to return a villager from the land of the dead, but I could bring them back to my home, and then they could populate the houses and give me more trades. So I brew up the antidote and give it to the zombie. After busting the librarian out of their cell, the first thing I found out was that testificates do not like being moved. The librarian was uncooperative and would only move if I pushed them from behind. To ensure ease of transport, I widen the laboratory and find a nice mine shaft. Now with elbow room, I start to move the bastard over. We get to the ladder and I box myself in with him. After some failed attempts yielding little success, I come to the conclusion that I will not be able to push this guy up the ladder. After removing myself from the enclosed ladder, I look around and see the mine shaft. An idea clicks, and I go into the mine to get redstone to make a piston. The plan was to put pistons below the librarian, and then I would cause a chain reaction to push him up. This would be easy due to the fact that he would have nowhere to escape to. So, I go into the mine, I get the iron and make a furnace, I get the redstone and make a piston. Armed with my device, I go back to the laboratory, only to find my librarian missing. I immediately think he's gone up the ladder and race up to find that he's left the igloo and been eaten by a zombie. Disappointed, I return to the lab. There I find my zombie villager has finished his rebirth, and he came back as a farmer. This was a sign, and I knew what I had to do. There would be no excuses or rock left unturned. This time, it was personal. I load him into the tube and destroy all the ladders. I put the pistons below him and started pushing him up. Nerd pulling beside him, I manage a steady pace as I break the rock above me and then continue to reform the pushing mechanism that elevated him. As I was finally reaching the top, water broke in above me. It began drowning me and ruined my machine. The worst part was I could hear all the monsters of the night crawling about. In a panic, I swim through the dark water and break through the ice. On the surface, I fight off foes of every shape and color to break back into the igloo, only to find that I'm too late. The zombies had broken down the door to get to the villager. In a maddened state, I charged desperately to get him back. I lacked the weaponry and skill, but I would burn down the nether before I let my farmer go without a fight. Clanging iron against rotten flesh, I fight to the bitter end to secure my igloo against the horde. With poison coursing through my veins, I managed to secure the igloo and kill the mobs inside. All around me I heard the snarls of the creatures who still craved my blood, but I bid them no mind. I looked through the trapdoor, only to find my villager had been slain. Frozen with remorseful fear and anger, I stare helplessly and am unable to move. As the sounds of the hiss start to overtake my speakers, I dare not flee. Instead, I turn around and welcome it. Now, this story is fun to tell because it only happened after I couldn't get a hold of something specific. Carrots aren't craftable or widely available. If Minecraft wants to remain in the public conscious, it needs to become more about adventuring to find specific items that will help with the basics. Minecraft needs more unique items like carrots, because even though you will never need them, if you ever want to enjoy them, it will be quite the journey to do so.